Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back with another video, and I'm so excited to give you all an inside look at the production of LEGO Star Wars sets from back in 2005, the year everyone's favorite Star Wars film was released. This information comes from a Star Wars Celebration 3 panel where a LEGO group representative showed the audience some production steps necessary to create the sets that we see on shelves, and this panel is packed full of prototype builds, molds, and box art that I guarantee you've never seen before. Before I start, I have to give a special thanks to Kevin Eisenstein for posting this in the Watto's Junkyard Facebook group. That brought this to my attention, and I really do appreciate it because this is pretty awesome. For those of you who don't know, covering LEGO Star Wars historical moments is one of my favorite things to do on this channel. I've done similar videos like this, including my coverage of the LEGO Star Wars booth at Celebration 2, as well as looking back at the guy who recreated the entire original trilogy with LEGO before they even made LEGO Star Wars sets. If you haven't seen either of those videos, do yourself a favor and check them out right after you watch this one. Finding gems like these in the archives of the internet is so difficult that Master Yoda himself would be cracking jokes at me.
How embarrassing. How embarrassing.
So when I finally do find something like this that isn't well known or has not extensively been covered, it gets me pretty excited.
We did it!
Star Wars Celebration 3 was a special event for many reasons. At the time, for many, it was the culmination of decades worth of Star Wars content. The journey that we had taken with our favorite characters was finally going to come to an end with Revenge of the Sith, which would release roughly a month after this event. As such, Celebration 3 was seen as a last big hoorah for Star Wars. As with the previous two celebrations, LEGO had a pretty big presence here, and while I'll definitely be covering the LEGO booth at this particular celebration in a future video, this video is going to focus on the presentation given by Rob Johnson at Celebration. The goal of the presentation was to give the audience a glimpse into the production process of LEGO Star Wars, and in turn, a lot of cool things were revealed. Unfortunately, we don't have video or a transcript of what was said at the panel, but we do have photos of the slideshow that was shown, so I'm going to show you guys all the slides that I felt were noteworthy. Right off the bat, I have to say that the artwork and graphics here just make me feel some type of way. As someone who lived through 2005 as a 10-year-old, these designs were a huge part of the marketing of Revenge of the Sith, and I just remember seeing them everywhere. These next couple of slides show off what apparently was the LEGO Creative Center in the Enfield, Connecticut headquarters. My guess is this is maybe where the presentation speaker worked. One fun thing about these offices though is just the sheer amount of toys, LEGO and non-LEGO, that line these desks. And of course we just have a 05 turbo tank sitting there on the back table. Next up was the product design portion of the presentation, and we are shown a prototype Geonosian starfighter, which actually looks quite similar to the set that we ended up getting. Obviously a lot of the parts are in different colors, but that's actually just because this set was the first time a lot of those parts were made, like the big brown wedges that are used on the front, so they literally just didn't exist during the design phase of this set. One thing I found interesting about this slide is it shows us that they would start with a list of sets that they would potentially want to make, then have them approved by Lucasfilm. Then later on, they would look at the piece counts and price points and make sure everything made sense, as opposed to starting with the price points that they wanted to hit and then coming up with the sets that best corresponded to those price points. He next talks about the minifigure design process. They start with a rough, and I mean rough, concept mold that gets refined over time. But oh my god, like look at this original mold for the Stormtrooper helmet. Like bruh, what even is that? It's sad to say, but I bet that if the final model looked like that, some of y'all still to this day will be saying, oh my god, the original Stormtrooper helmet is so much better, the new one is too realistic and it lacks that classic LEGO charm. And speaking of molds that nightmares are made of, here's Yoda's rough sculpt. And here are some other sculpts. We got sculpts for everybody. Come get your sculpts here. It's worth noting that this Qui-Gon is sporting that prototype lightsaber mold that we've seen pop up from time to time. And finally, here's a good look at the steps they take getting from the original sculpt to the actual molded LEGO piece that would appear in a set. Now to me, this seems a little overkill, but they went through 7 different layouts before they decided on the box art for Wookiee Attack. Even the lava splatters at the top of the box were changed along the way. I mean, talk about perfectionists. I'd love to know, out of all the layouts that we see here, which do you guys think is the best? I personally am really feeling layout number 5, but layout number 3 is by far the worst in my opinion. I can't lie, this next section on photography got me. It is so awesome seeing behind the scenes photos of these sets and their iconic box art poses. For years, I've stared extensively at pretty much all of these images, and now we finally have a look at the actual setting in which they were taken. I mean, especially the shot of that UCS Star Destroyer, there's just something magical about seeing how these iconic images came to be. But we've saved what might be the best part of the presentation for last. The box designers at the time were tasked with creating a LEGO Star Wars packaging that had a retro look in order to celebrate the release of the original trilogy on DVD. I think we're all pretty aware of what eventually was come up with from this task, but here are some unused concepts, and I gotta say, they're pretty wild. It appears that one of their ideas to accomplish this was just doing throwback LEGO-centric box art, which sounds kind of crazy when you remember that this was just back in 2004. So here we have a concept of the 04 Falcon with that classic white Legoland box art. A second box art concept used the yellow Legoland box art, and I have to admit, like, this actually looks pretty good. I particularly love the icy snowspeeder box art, and while the sets are probably a little bit more advanced than they would have been had they come out in the 70s and 80s, these throwback box arts are a fun way to imagine what LEGO Star Wars might have looked like had LEGO been producing Star Wars sets as the original trilogy was being released. They show off a third concept, which actually ended up being produced, but in the blue box color scheme, which I surprisingly think looks better than the black and gold that we see here. And then the presentation ends with the speaker bragging about a couple of awards that they won for packaging design. Looking through these slides and learning more about the early days of LEGO Star Wars was an absolute delight. With all the rumor websites and designer interviews that we get nowadays, I think we take for granted just how much we know about LEGO Star Wars. So finding classic pieces like this that show me things that I didn't know about LEGO Star Wars is always fascinating. I'll end the video by asking which part of the presentation did you guys find the most interesting. That's pretty much going to bring the video to a close. So if you like what I do, go ahead and support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button, and I'll be back again very soon.